boys and girls, RFK Refugees podcast. Ted here, John here. We are back 2025 and starting off as predictably a little bit rough. It's been a month since we've last joined you. A lot's happened. We'll catch you guys up on all of it. Before we do that, John, how you doing, my friend? I hope your holidays were good. I hope everything was good.
No, you know we've been talking about it.
It's true. That's true.
It's been some rough sledding with the old canine compatriot, but he's fine for now. Yeah. But as you'll see, both of us, I think the thing that's important for those who are listening to the show and not watching it, we are now we're gonna start like wearing the DC United Legion jerseys. Like anytime a player gets sold, we're gonna buy it and wear it on the show. So I've got my fresh AFC Bournemouth Pataya Kamboni jersey on, which I gotta say, I've never had an Umbro jersey before, or I haven't had one in like 15 years or something. I think the fit's nice. I think they do my size correctly. So, and some brands do not. So I'm very happy to have that. How's your dog? Is everything going on well? Your dog's doing all right?
Everything's doing okay with our dog. Our dog is predictably getting older and less active. So there's definitely been he's now, before he would wake us up at 6 a.m. to want to eat. Now he's like reliably sleeping till like 8 or 9 or until we actually wake him up, and then he's like, "Oh, I'm hungry."
There are worse things than that of evolution. That's not the worst one. How was the rest of how were your holidays, and how was the last couple weeks?
Holidays were good. Holidays are good. Home situation is still as it was in 2024. Working towards changing that. So this behind me will hopefully change sometime in 2025. Is the goal. So that's been. But other holidays were good. Seeing family, most of that stuff. So it's been good and ready to get back, man. This might sound kind of crazy with everything we're about to talk about. I'm definitely taking the vibes of the ownership of the fans, and maybe some trepidation, maybe some angst among certain people. But I'm excited to be back. I'm excited to be to start watching some soccer. I missed it. I was like, I get like Saturday nights. I'm like, I guess I'll watch college football.
Right.
Woo.
Right.
I want some actual, some soccer, even though there is League MX that just started. So I can enjoy that at least. Cause everything else, like European soccer, is all like during the week. It's all during when I work normal working hours, and like, I can't watch any of it. So anyway.
I was watching like Fiorentina versus some crazy small Italian team. I have like Paramount Plus on at all times while I'm working, so I've seen a lot more Serie A than I ever intended to, and it's not that great. I'm not a huge fan of it, other than the top teams.
Yeah, man. Premier League, German soccer, kind of where like I find my little sweet spot. But I also have teams that I care about a lot in those avenues. But let's get into it. Let's start talking about the news. We got news.
Monza. Was that you that told me that?
What's that?
No, somebody on Twitch told me it was Monza. Yes, thank you. Monza was the one playing Fiorentina.
All right, well let's jump into it. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. We got a lot of questions you guys brought to us. When we go away from a long time, you guys always deliver with the questions. Yep. Let's start with the news that broke. I guess we could say. Question mark. It's been rumored for a long time. Tom Bogart's reported it. Sam Stejskal's reported it. Everybody's reported it up and down MLS that MLS is seriously considering actual cash for transfers. If you've ever watched MLS, when you want to acquire a player with MLS, you have to make a trade. You can trade draft picks, you can trade players, you can trade conditional GAM, which we'll get into maybe one of the conditional GAMs that's coming in. You can agree to take certain amounts of like roster space off of players. Some very weird stuff you can trade.
You used to be able to trade discovery rights of players. That's another asset.
Allocation order, another thing you used to be able to trade for that you can't. I think you can still trade. Discovery is still a thing. Like allocation doesn't exist, but there's been enough scouting. I think now it's like not everybody's going after like the same players anymore, so it's a little bit less common.
I've got my my dibs on Harry Kane. Should he come? DC United has her on their list,
but you could not say here, here San Jose, I will give you $1 million for this player and just write out a check and sign it over. It was always in GAM. GAM was the new thing. You've all seen the GAM trades that have been coming. Now MLS will now allow, apparently starting right now, they still need to apparently work it out with the players union. I have tons of questions like, how does this impact the cap? Like if you're spending $10 million to like sign a player, like I think this is right now for now is just going to be used like on designated players. In the article, it's called out. Evander and Lucho Acosta are apparently players that are rumored to be sort of kind of in that mindset. So
for those of you listening, my eyebrow has raised to the middle of my forehead when Ted said, "Oh, Lucho Acosta is one of those players rumored to potentially be a target." Wouldn't it be horrible if we had a number 10 with a mercurial background and eagerness to leave at some point? I could 12 months. If we could just make him, you could get him through one season before he goes back to Argentina. I would be okay with that.
We did do the 2-4 GAM. That is the rumored roster build that we're looking at. So maybe they would have to be a question of how much roster room we would have. But we still have not signed that fourth U22 player. So technically, like, we could sign a third DP, second DP, and we'll get into a minute about that. That's going to be a huge topic of conversation.
That's going to be in every Facebook and Instagram comment thread for every DC United post for the rest of the year. There's going to be something about that. Yeah, something about the DPs in the roster.
But I mean, do you kind of agree? This feels like MLS may be looking at this and saying, there really isn't, when you sign a designated player, there isn't really any sort of avenue to where you either have to sell that player abroad if you want to get him off your contract, or you ride him out to the end of your contract. You can maybe trade for GAM. You can trade him for GAM, but usually if you're trading him for GAM, you're trading a player that has next to no value. Mm-hmm. So if you're trying to sell a DP, you're trying to recoup like actual cash value. That is where I kind of see this sort of landing. U22 initiatives, designated players, those are the players that are going to be sort of the targets of this sort of cash, where they can sort of say, look, you're still going to get your value out of this player. I have questions like, can the selling team still take that? If they sell a GAM eligible player, are they able to turn that into GAM? My guess would be probably not, because then why not just trade the GAM? But I don't know. We'll see. It's a new frontier we're going to have, and they can only do this twice. You can only do this twice, apparently, in a season.
Here's what I think about this. It should not have been announced when camps opened. I think it should have been announced in the interim time between the MLS Cup final and then today. I think that I am sure, like all the other things, I'm hoping that the teams had like an inkling that this was going to happen. Like there was conversation, and obviously the owners have to approve everything. So obviously the owner of DC United, who, if I remember correctly, is like not on any of the committees, the relevant like rulemaking committees or anything. Like he's not on any. He's got no voice in anything except for like the overall owners vote. But yeah, I think the transparency is probably pretty good. Anything that increases like the understanding of a player's internal value, I think is important. Now, we care and our listeners care, and beyond that, no one cares. But hey, it's for us. It's like we've been asking for that kind of thing. So thank you,
Todd. Hello from 33,000 feet. Hello, Todd from 33,000 feet. You probably win as the highest.
You're the highest listener of the show. Congrats for being so high, Todd.
Some people might disagree with depending on our definition of highest. Okay, let's jump into
get in the chat if actually you're higher than Todd. However you want to define that, you can get in the chat and compete.
Exactly. But yeah, I think this cash transfer thing will be interesting. I'll be curious to see how it develops. Sometimes I think MLS has intentions about what they think it's going to be used for, and then there's some GM out there that finds a totally different use for it, and it becomes very, very different. I think we've seen that maybe a little bit with the U22 signings. I think the idea was to bring young starters into the league, and now it's being used more to build players. So it'll be interesting. Other sort of DC United news, we got the big stuff I think we're going to hit. DC has a new head of scouting. Kevin Flanagan will be the new head of scouting. Ricardo Bayer will also be coming in from analytics from Universidad de Chile. So cool, good signings all around, and good to kind of fill up the conference. I have no idea how these guys are going to do. No idea.
They exist. I'm a big fan of them existing. That's probably my favorite part about them. We don't have this on the rundown, but we should definitely include this. Is the ban hammer on the Philadelphia Union that came down today?
Oh, apologies, by the way. Kevin Flanagan, it will be the new academy director. I apologize. Replaces back. And then we have a Bayer for incoming analytics. I think we covered the new head of scouting, or at least the new head of scouting came in at some point. So I think apologies for that mishap on my end. But Want to make sure I got that correctly.
That was from Patrick. How do you remember how to say his name? Wakama.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing I remember about him is the interview that Roche had with him. That was like one of the more awkward interviews I've ever heard in my entire life. That's about all I know about him. And that there were no academy signings out of his duration of time there. But yeah, let's talk about the Philadelphia Union having a 3 transfer window ban. Did you see that?
I did see that a little bit. So the
article came out today that basically said that the Union are on a list of teams that are on a
registration ban
for 3 windows, and the reason why is hilarious. Did you see the reason why? That's the best part about this. So they signed a player for their reserve team, and so they're supposed to, when it's part of. I mean, this is like the reason the Union exists. Is that you get money, the new FIFA rule in the last, like, I don't know, 5 or 10 years now, that if you're an academy team, you get a percentage cut of the transfer fee. It gives you an incentive to actually develop these players as they go on. So the team that developed this player, I think it's in South America. I don't know which country.
Venezuela, I think I saw.
Venezuela, okay. And it was like an academy team, like a small local team. And I think, as the Union would tell it, this team did not have like a very publicized presence. Like it's maybe hard to track them down. And they missed the deadline to give them their cut. And then that team flagged it to FIFA and saying, hey, they're supposed to pay us. And now they're banned for 3 windows from registering any players. The Union in a much better situation than DC United would be in this case, because they could take MLS Next Pro team probably, or maybe there's probably some window around it that they can field the team, but that's pretty wild. I think that's the pretty craziest thing to happen, and it's not really. It's sort of kind of new, so it's not really fully fleshed out. But
I believe Jonathan Tannenwald said that they're working on a solution. Like there's a way they can rectify this situation.
I don't want them to. I want this to be like the dumbest reason ever to get a 3. That's like it's such a huge punishment for what is clearly like a clerical error. I don't think they were like, it was also $750. That's the other part of this that's important to realize.
Yeah, I think there'll be a way to
I think so too, but
rectify this.
It's funnier to me that if they didn't.
Yeah, so we'll see. We'll see what happens. All right, we already got a question from Todd talking about the Click one out or did Troy want him out. Let's jump right into the probably the biggest story that we missed. I think we recorded the show and then literally this trade dropped, I think, later in that week. So we have not had a chance to talk about this. But yes, if you are living under a rock, haven't been paying attention to DC, and you wonder, man, I can't wait to go watch. Can't wait to go watch Matthias Click, that number 43 suited for DC
just got a new 43 jersey that I'm going to wear for this year. I'm so excited.
Please don't tell me you did that.
No.
I've got one. I've got a Click jersey that I bought when he scored that goal, and I was like, this guy's going to be great. I think he'll be a legend at DC. So I am a proud owner of a Click 43 jersey, the road kit. But Matthias Click was traded to Atlanta, and I just saw a picture. There was a picture of him arriving in training camp, I believe. So looking fresh. Traded for $50K in a conditional GAM, I believe. I believe they traded him for a draft pick, which then flipped for, I believe, $50K in GAM as well. There are some hidden things to this trade. So, like, off the top of the head, I think some people read this and said, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe like this is like robbery. Like, how did they do this?" It was originally reported that it was going to be $300K in GAM plus $50K in conditional GAM. That turned out to be $300K in roster space. So the way to think about this is on the MLS spreadsheet, whatever spreadsheet manages or database,
Dave Casper's spreadsheet.
the guy that his only job is to manage the spreadsheet. I don't know, probably not, but basically, rather than the $743K that Click's roster spot would take, it's only going to cost $443K, and he will be an Atlanta United player. DC get the international slot back, so they do get that back. So there's some underlying things to this trade that DC did get back. I think a lot of people got caught on the $50K and all of that, but
I think they also got caught on the designated player spot. I think that's the thing that they most caught on. I think fairly.
Yeah, DC will basically have to sit on a dead DP slot. John, we stepped away from this. I think you were very much not in for this trade. Where do you land? Where do you land right now? I guess
as you know, Todd's question in mind, I think that Click probably wanted out in some ways. I think either from a perspective of what they're asking out of him, like what he, like what was the goal this year? All the conversations have been, we're giving youth a run here. We're gonna emphasize youth here. That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna make that our identity. And Click is, not that. That's quite clearly not his thing. I have a feeling there's going to be a lot more expectations on the defensive side of the ball for a team that conceded so many goals.
Mm-hmm.
I still don't love. Here's the real thing. Here's the thing where I'm caught is that in my mind, last year was the year of cleaning up the mess, and this was the year of no more mess. No more having to like undo roster malfeasance to sort of put the best team on the field forward. And it's not now. I saw somebody describe it. I think it was Kim on Blue Sky said last year was year -1, and now this year is year 0, and then next year is year 1. As far as like where we are in this roster, and I don't blame people from being like, I have heard this story so many times. I thought this was finally going to be the year. We have a Golden Boot winner, and yet again we are hamstrung by some stupid asinine like MLS roster building situation where we don't have the top talent or the players that anyone's heard of, the gate the gate draws other than Benteke. So I get it. I think it's not a best case scenario. It's not where anybody necessarily maybe hopes they'd be, but this was. You got to Ally McKay. You give him one thing. You got to give him credit is he is not. He's not wasting his opportunity here. He's not pulling his punches. He is telling ownership like, listen, I'm the guy. I'm going to make these calls. I'm going to make bold moves. If it doesn't work out, you can fire me. But you brought me in here to change stuff. I'm changing stuff. So that's. My overall is that I'm like, I wish this were not the case. I wish we were still not here, but we are, I guess, for one more year, and then next year. And also, too, you've talked about it for a while. You had said maybe this was the way we were going to go. This 2 and 4 thing was the way we were going to go all along, and maybe that makes the most sense for this club, and maybe it does. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer necessarily on that. How are you feeling about it?
I don't know. I don't know. I think a lot of it's going to depend. I think the blunt of the trade has been softened a little bit. We'll get to, I think, like talk about taking advantage of a distressed asset like that. We'll get into that in one of the incoming players coming in. So it's been blunted a little bit in my mind by a move that happened lately, where it's like we're kind of like they kind of cancel each other out a little bit in a certain sense. I don't think Click. I don't want to say Click wanted out. I don't think he really cared. I think he was like, look, man, I'm making my $2.1 million. I'm going to make that regardless. I think the team was like, look, we really want you, can you at least go try and see if we can find a deal abroad? I think they went to Poland. Poland was like, yeah, we'll take a look. No, we're not going to pay you $2.1 million. Sorry, buddy. He's like, okay, I want to make that money. For those saying, I think Timothy's saying doesn't make sense. They kept most of Click's salary on the books. If you're going to make this move, it actually, in my opinion, makes a lot of sense. Everyone here is talking about how like, and this is where I want to get into. Like, I feel like we all have opinions in sports. We all have opinions about what teams should do. I think we all do need to realize that there are certain realities that we all have to live in. So I think there are 3 areas you can be. You can be like me, where you're like, I don't know if this is a good move. I don't know if this is a bad move. I'm going to wait and see kind of what the final roster looks like. This could look like we could sign this Gabriel Aguayo, I think his name is, one of the U22 guys. He could fill that last international spot for us, and he could be an absolute world beater, and this will look like just an absolute masterclass. Click could like step wrong on the turf and completely blow out his ankle, and this will look like even like a better move that we didn't have that that's sitting on our roster. I think this is an Atlanta podcast. Go listen to them if you want to talk about that. Yeah,
they're gonna do okay.
You want to talk about that, but and then the other side you can be against this move. And I think you can be for it if you really. Some people out there are people out there that didn't like Click, and they have said like, I'm glad he's gone. I'm glad that there's other players out there. I think where I want to be very clear is like you're against this move. The options are you take Atlanta's deal, or you hold him for a year. They could not use the buyout. They used the 24 buyout on Mahan and Jazz. They used the 2025 buyout on Steve Birnbaum. You get one buyout. There was a rumor it was going to be 2 at one point. They can't do it. So you had this trade, or you were going to keep him for the year. And I think if you're against this trade and you say, you know what, I would have rather have him for a year, I think that's a perfectly valid place to be at. But you can't be at we should have gotten more out of Atlanta. Guarantee you, I think Atlanta was maybe the only team interested in him. So it's kind of like, take what you can get. And, Garth Lagerwey is no sucker. He is going to take advantage of a distressed asset. DC, I think, wanted to maybe have some other players step up. I think it's interesting. He talks about believing in youth. He calls out Gabriel Pirani. He calls out Jackson Hopkins specifically. I feel like in the interview he made after the trade as players he wants to step up. Whether you agree with that or not, it is what it is. I'm not like giving up on this season. I think doing this and then going for the 2-4 GAM, which if you don't know, maybe for those, let's educate. You've got 2 different sort of paths you can take for your roster build. You can take the 3 designated players and 3 U22 initiatives, or you can go just 2 designated players, 4 U22 initiative players, and then you get an additional $2 million in GAM that you can buy to basically make your roster better. So that's extra cap space. I think if you're going this route, I think that to me makes the most sense to do, because it does allow you to sort of raise that floor on your roster, bring in players, and to have a more depth-based team. And I can't say I don't disagree with maybe going for that as maybe your roster build. And it's a new mechanism. The 3-3 is probably going to be the most common. We'll see how it works. I still do have some questions about the youth development. You don't have an MLS Next Pro team. That I think is going to hinder your ability. Where basically now your 23-man roster becomes your MLS Next Pro team, or becomes your team where these guys are going to get opportunities, and it's going to be a lot of sink or swim when it comes to that. So that's where I land. I'm completely in the middle as far as it, and we'll see what happens. Anything else you want to touch on from news? What we got, the incomings, which we'll talk about. I don't know if you want to weave some questions into that, which I
think the weaving. We'll try. I feel like we just start going, and then we'll do our weave.
And also to add to confusion and to add to your previous point about it really just undersells how much of a mess everything was before Ali Mackay comes in. Not to say Ali Mackay is going to come in and be this magical wizard and make things better. I don't know if he's going to. He's very much in the early stages of this, but the click thing really undersells it. And I think there's some confusion about someone brought up on our Discord. I won't call them out specifically, but they were like, why, if we were planning on getting rid of him, why did we play him so much in 2024? The option was exercised in 2023. So we could have sat him for every single game in 2024, and he still would have been here. That contract still would have been exercised.
Also, we often had not a full roster he was a player that was available, and he was one of the best players. So that's why. Anyway,
yeah,
there's a lot of reasons why we played him a lot.
There's a lot of reasons why a lot of guys played last year. I will say we'll get into some of the additions on the team. I won't say this is like a perfect depth situation. I think there's still going to be some players that are going to come in. I think they still have roster room. Now, whether they're maybe keeping some of that on the burner until summer comes along, and then they can see kind of where their holes are and where they might want to look to improve.
Speaking of this, let me weave in this question from Mark.
Yeah.
Ali has indicated to Goff that we may once again not actually have a full roster, won't fill all our spots because we're being patient. We also failed to use all available spots in the roster last year, and there were multiple times where we had so many injuries and absences that we had something like 5 players on the bench, and 2 of them were goalkeepers. So the question is, do we believe Ali? Are we actually going to roll the dice again like this and find ourselves with only 15 healthy bodies during the May Death March, later than May? Or is Ali just keeping his cards close to the vest and will fill out our spots more fully before the season starts? So the No Next Pro team, I think, is important here to look at. You have a different read on maybe what Ali meant. I think you just kind of got into it, but what that really means by sort of keeping our powder dry with no DP slots and lots of roster, but lots of salary cap room. So there's still lots of maneuverability here.
They've brought in a lot of players and they've still kept, I would have to go through the exact math, and the exact math would probably still be wrong. But they still have significant amount of roster space. Now they have one more international slot. You're not really going to acquire, like, Nashville is like the only team, and you're not going to give up something significant from another team unless you'd have to trade something significant to get an international slot back. So really we're kind of at this, like, one more international slot. There is other options. I think either more players will come in. I will say last year, I think the problem was you had a lot of dead weight contracts filling multiple positions. It prevented you from really bringing in a lot of depth. You look at the amount of money that was just sunk into Steve Birnbaum, into Christian Dahomey, into Martin Rodriguez. That hurt the ability to be deep elsewhere. And as such, and remember as well, like they ran Mohamed Yaz during that whole time, never really saw the field. And he was a left back, and he could have played that left back position. They had Connor Antley, who they could play both sides, so they kind of filled in as an emergency, like, guy in there, and then he got hurt. And that killed that whole left position was a mess this time. Now they've got David Schnegg. Now they've got Connor Antley, who can now sort of be that depth guy because presumably Schnegg will be that starter. You've got Dotson, who can play on the right, and I think maybe he can play on the left too, but he'll be your backup to Herrera. So you've got, potential goalkeepers out there. Your center backs, you got 4 center backs now rumored to come in. So it's not, I will say the depth is not 100% there, but I will say it's a more balanced. You look up and down this roster, and there's not a salary on this roster that you look at and you go, that is way too much, or that is an expensive salary, or that is an expensive salary. It all kind of, it feels a bit more sane than it has been in the past. So I think it's better. I think our depth is actually much better than last year, and I think we still got room to go in and grab more players. So
yeah, I think we'll see once the full depth chart gets filled out here. I don't feel there's still, I still think that I'm trying to think of a position on the field. I don't feel comfortable in the center of midfield still. That still makes me feel a little anxious, but that has more to do with my feelings about Pirani than other players. Other fans have a bit more of an optimistic viewpoint on him, despite the fact that I was guilted into buying a jersey upstairs in my closet with his name on the back of it. I'm still not necessarily sold on it, but we'll go from there. All right. This is I want to make sure I read this because this is going to be the mindset in a lot of, like I said, the Instagram comments. We sort of said this, but I want to be more explicit. DC Ulysses says, I imagine you're going to get into this, but I have a similar question. Why isn't rolling with one DP as we probably pass peak Benteke just the same old bad, cheap garbage that's been happening for years? I want to believe it's not, but it's kind of hard to see it as different at this point. I think, Ted really got into explaining, like, you could have kept Click. There would have been no real harm in doing that. You could have had 2 DPs. Would this team have been drastically better had you have done that, and then not had the additional international spot, not had the cap space, not had the ability to sign a 4th under 22 player? I don't know. That's a hard case to make. I get why the thought is that it's cheapness, but really it's the opposite, because they paid for this. They paid that transfer. They paid to get Click here. And then they gave them away from a financial perspective of nothing. What they're getting is on paper salary cap relief. The owner is not making any more money for having done this. So I'm telling you, every single post there, it's going to be there. It's going to be the undercurrent of the year. They're going to be like, Benteke and who? Like, what is it? Particularly if this team starts slowly, which it could, entirely possible. This is a team that missed the playoffs last year. It's entirely possible that this team doesn't shoot out of the blocks flying, but I don't view it as cheap. That's not. Yeah. You can say it's a lot of things. The thing that annoys me, like I already said, is that this team is not 1 year further along in their build. But it's not cheap. That's not my opinion anyway.
I agree with you. It's not cheap, and I feel like there's always this avenue, and I understand MLS rules are tricky. I think you can look at this from a perspective of they are going with a roster. They could have gone for the 3-3 roster build and be able to sign a designated player. They're not doing that. They're going for a method to sort of bring in young players. I will say same old bad, cheap garbage has been happening for years. The only thing I will say to that is I think the reason that gives me hope in Alan McKay is Alan McKay has actually been very communicative with Stephen Goff. He's sat down now, I believe, for one of them might have been MLS Media Day, but he's willing to answer questions. It's clear he's communicating directly with Goff about like how much cap room this guy takes, how much of this guy takes. Like he understands that this team has not earned the benefit of the doubt to everybody can just shut up and deal with what he does. And that was the state for years. You never saw Dave Casper sit down for any interviews. You never saw this team. And that was part of my big frustration was that the team didn't tell us what they want to be. They would give these long platitudes about, oh, we want to still be a competitive team. And I'm like, what does that mean? Do you want to have youth? Do you want to do this? What do you tell me what you want to be? And now it's like, we believe in youth. We're going to go out and get, undervalued talents. We're going to bring them in. We're going to sign U22 players. We made the first U22 signing of a goalkeeper. Anyone, no one's done that. And I think that is marketably different than what we've had for years in the past. It does feel like, despite the fact that this is like, might be painful, I'm not sold it's going to be painful. I don't ever want to go into a season and say this is going to be terrible or bad. I think there's still some hope that if some players elevate their game from last year, that this team could still be, I don't think they're going to be top 3 in the league, but I think they can still, I think top 7 is still a realistic goal for this team. I still think that is a goal. Every MLS team goes into a year. If things go right, you can easily be 5th, 6th, 7th in this league. It's when things go horribly wrong that you end up bottom of the table. Every team has the talent to be top 7. It's just a matter of how much does it all come together. So I think that's one thing to think about it as different is there's communicative front office. We're committing to a plan. Like we're actually committing to something where we're going to build this team, 1, 2, 3 years. And, he's not really BSing you and saying this team is going to be competitive. He's like, it's going to be a challenge, but we feel like we can make these guys better and we can make this team better. So it's very different from what we've had in the past.
EJ Evers says, fill in the blanks. In 2025, when this team is successful or wins, it will be because what? And when this team is unsuccessful or loses, it will be because of what? I'll go first since I've had a little more time to think about it. This team will be successful when Benteke is finishing his chances. Mm-hmm. This team will be unsuccessful when there are any injuries at forward or outside back. I think Herrera or Schnegg being injured for any amount of time that is more than 1 or 2 or 3 games will slow this team down. They have invested in depth. They have not invested in proven MLS caliber outside backs. They have gotten guys that can play the position so that they're not forced to put a Dahomey in left back or right back again. And that's good. That's the base level. That's what we need to have. But if there's any sort of situation where these players are out for a long period of time, I think, not having seen these new players, my assumption is that the gap in their ability to generate offense from those positions going forward is going to take a big dive down. So that's what I would be concerned about. What are your answers for when this team will be doing well or when they're going to stink?
This team will be successful when, I think obviously Benteke still shows either very little drop off or is leveled off or pretty much the same production.
And Golden Boot again, please.
Yeah, Golden Boot again. Or even I'd say 15, 16 goals, fine. Like, doesn't have to be 20 or so, however many goals he had. If anything, maybe a drop in production means other guys have stepped up. And I think the young players that have been talked about, Teku DiPietro returns from up in form. He starts to maybe having a successful year. I am still convinced that like the roster mess at that sort of left side really was a detriment to him. But it's not here nor there. I think he has more freedom as to where you can fit him into this roster with some of the moves that they've made. The international signings that this team has brought in, the guy Kai Rolls looks like he is on his way in. Joao Peglo, a lot of those guys show proven MLS ability. A lot of the problem is like you're not finding proven MLS ability because we don't know on a lot of these guys. We don't know if they'll be proven MLS players. Kojima looks promising. A lot of people like him in Seattle, like St. Louis. So it's really going to be about those new players. If this team goes in and I'd say half of these players significantly contribute either to goals, assists, if Kai Rawls can be, that sort of that MLS type defender, or they get, a guy like Garrison Tubbs to step up as well. So I think it's going to be young players stepping up. It's going to be international signings coming in and playing well. That'll be successful. It won't be successful if, the young players aren't stepping up and the new signings brought in don't play well. I think that's really the basis of it. I
think if Boris Enau stinks, we're in trouble. I think we might be in trouble.
Yeah.
Because then the midfield depth takes a big nosedive. Also, a player that we talked about in the and I don't think we talked about it. It's kind of important. The last acquisition that happened this week. Have we talked about Leal yet?
We have not talked about Leal.
I think this is a good time to talk about it. We talked about sort of the fact that we can't bring in a DP, and that sometimes teams will take on, to get to take the player off of your hands. They're gonna take less money on their books than maybe you are. An example of it going the other direction is DC United signing Randall Leal from Nashville and Costa Rica national team, I believe, for $100,000. He was a player being waived and was on $1.1 million last year, and DC United are only going to pay him $100K, which is the veteran minimum. He's a player that played like 50 minutes last year because of injuries. However, he has at times scored, I think he scored 7 or 8 goals for Nashville in his first year or second year there. So this is a buy low, not necessarily sell high, but buy low, maybe have a little bit of a renaissance situation, and creates a little bit more competition for spots. Doesn't mean that, now you have a 3 forward staple. You got Baji, you got Leal. Leal can play as a 9 and as a winger. Is that and as a 10? He's kind of like all over the place, right?
All over the place. He play left, right, 10. He's very much a kind of jack of all trades type attacker. So a very and when he's been on the roster, I think the consensus you get from Nashville fans is that when he's healthy, he's very good. There's a reason DC's picking up on waivers. There's a reason DC doesn't have to pay that much for him because he's been hurt. He was hurt basically all of 2024. But this is kind of a perfect example of, what if you get if this guy comes in and plays the way he played in 2022, that will be an absolute success for Mackay and a masterclass as far as that goes. This move of waiving Leal is kind of like worse than what is happening with DC and the trade for Click, because DC at least gets an international slot back. They at least get $300K in salary cap relief, so you're not getting the full hit. DC is paying $100,000. The guy made $1.1 million. So Nashville is on the hook for that entire $1 million salary, and he has a green card. So you're not even getting an international slot back. Like you're not even like pulling that back. So I think it was Ben Wright said that's pretty disastrous for Nashville. Kind of shocking there weren't like other options maybe to get at least a little something back there. But I mean, if this works out, if Leal comes in, he plays well. He does really well for DC. This will look like a great move, and that this could be the type of move that completely makes you forget that, oh, by the way, they're also without a DP in Matej's Click. So that's kind of like the shortcut a little bit to that.
He becomes your great value designated player. He becomes your sort of back. It looks like one, but doesn't count as one. Another question here from the Enclave. It's sort of like a forecasting question here. Do you think we may get more out of our younger players this year as they step up? Ted Hopkins, Mural, especially as he has big shoes to fill. What are your takes? Boy, they better. I mean, this whole season is predicated sort of on that happening. And Mackay is a player, it's a guy that trusts his evaluative skills. He's the one who the first thing he did when he got in, besides talk to I think he might have talked to the fans first, but the second thing he did was sign Prani to pick up his option and figure out how he could stay on the team. So that is he's committed. He's committed to this player. I don't know if his reputation is staked on him, but he
I did see someone predicate that I don't know where they heard this, but some people think that, look at Pirani, who just, by the way, got married. Congratulations to him. He had Ruan at his wedding, and he was a teammate of Ruan for like a few months. Ruan's also Brazilian. And I don't think the team had any other sort of Brazilians, maybe Pedro. And so there was this
Portuguese anyway.
Yeah, he spoke Portuguese. So the thought process might be that they brought in João Peglo. Not that they don't think he could also be a good player, but also he's Brazilian, he's Portuguese, he's around Prani's age, so maybe that can give him a teammate and also kind of boost him a little bit. So that was an interesting thought that I thought someone had, and I don't know. We'll see if it's
that's sort of the cliche about Brazilians is they miss being around. They miss being in Brazil. And B, they wish there were more Brazilians around them. I think it's so that this would not be the first time that's the case. But I think also he was young. He was in a new place. We talked about this. I'd love to be wrong. If he is great, if he's like MLS All-Star caliber, someone can go through. They can search our transcripts and see every time I or we talked about him and just ruin us. They could do that. Don't do that, but you could do that. So I would love to be wrong about this. And I think this team making a big jump up doesn't necessarily rely on him. I don't think that this team is not built around him for certain. And this team could also spend that other 22 spot on another 10, a pure 10. They could make more roster moves internally to find one in the league. A lot of things could happen. But I think this team, if it's going to really make a significant step up from just missing or sneaking into the playoffs, it will be all of these players. It would be Mackay being like hitting 21 in blackjack like 6 times in a row.
Wow. You think that much? I don't think they need to do. I think you like underestimated.
No, I meant like him, that he could just be a lucky guy talking about Jackson Hopkins as being a major contributor is, after his last year, I think that's kind of wild.
True.
That you are. I mean, there's no bigger fan. There's not on the internet other than in the Hopkins family. There's no bigger fan. I think that he has a lot to prove to me to sort of be talked about in that breath from the general manager. Like, we expect him. He's going to get clicks minutes, all of them, and it'll be fine. So yeah, we'll see. I think that I think some of those players will. I don't know. All of them won't, but some of them will. And I think that as long as the ones that need to do, and as long as the depth that we've signed can deliver, then we're playing in the cold instead of watching.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens. I think we got questions. I had all these incoming players. I think we've got some roster discussion within our questions. PGH says, who's going to be the next starting keeper? I have no idea. I legitimately have no idea. Kim Jong-un, dude's got some like wicked calves, man. Go find. I think there's an Instagram picture of him. Not sure.
Kim Jong-un has got the distribution will not be a problem. He's not going to have an issue getting the ball up the field unless these are all vanity leg muscles. I think they want him to start. I think that would be their preference, but they've got players with MLS experience. They've got player with MLS experience, and they've got player with USL Championship experience as a starter.
The hurdle for him to start, I don't think, is extremely high. This is a move. This is going. I think you can make an argument, and really, honestly, across the roster, you can make an argument. Other than Benteke, Herrera, and Schnegg, I would say every position is up for grabs. Maybe Bartlett in that center back spot. But I mean, I could see McNulton apparently was chasing spots, chasing like starting roles at Nashville. A lot of Nashville fans say before he got hurt. So I think there is competition all across the roster. And I think that's the one good thing you can see is like there is going to be players that are going to have to elevate their game or they are not going to see minutes. There's, very few players where you're going to see where they're going to be safe, regardless of what happens, like they're safe. So I think that's a good thing. And I think the goalkeeper situation is a perfect example. Jordan Farr could be like that diamond in the rough that elevates his game. Luis Barraza probably becomes like your default if Kim Jong-un isn't ready and Jordan Farr plays like a typical USL goalkeeper, he probably becomes your starter. But I think you're right. I think they want Kim to be the starter. I think it's going to be a lot of wait and see. I think there's a language. The one thing I have about signing him is I am a little concerned that they are hiring somebody to assimilate him. I think that's smart. You're having a guy who's never been outside Korea to bring him into the U.S. Is a challenge. I have questions. Goalkeepers have to be sometimes that organizational structure. How is that going to look? Is it going to be more on Kai Rawls and Lucas Bartlett to do that organization, and he's just going to be the shot stopper? I don't know how that's going to work.
The interpreter's going to stand behind the net. He's going to be the 12th man, literally.
Yeah. I mean, there is a lot of, just you. So maybe it'll work. I don't know. But that is one thing I've thought about a little bit with regards to signing him. Sabatis, I'm going to say, says, will MLS ever have comparable roster stability of other major North American sport leagues, or are we perpetually getting an almost new team seemingly every year, or has it just been a recent DCU problem? I will say MLS is a selling league now. We have Akambone, maybe sold before, maybe DC was ready. Maybe they thought they could actually get him a starting role. Bournemouth comes in and they want to sign him for $1 million to $2 million. I was really hoping he'd make that appearance in that FA Cup game. I was like, please make that appearance. Let's cash that $1 million check. Didn't happen. I don't think it was ever a plan for him to play. I think it was just to give him that experience. But I think you see that a lot across the league. I think there are eventually you do settle in on like MLS lifers. We had those. We had Steve Birnbaum. We had Russell Knaus. We had guys were like, that's their level. They start families. They're like, yes, I have aspirations, but I'm comfortable right now. So I think you'll still see core guys, but yes, you will see a lot of rotation when it comes to players. And
I've heard people who want to be fans of this team talk about this exactly. It's like, I don't know any of these people from year to year. I don't know any of this team. I don't care about these players because they just cycle in and out. And I get that, legit. The situation for DC United specifically is that this team has not been good and has missed the playoffs for a long, long time. So you should be chopping and changing. When the team gets better and the team gets dependably in the playoffs, I think you probably have a little less roster turnover. But the people in charge are, at least now have to win or at least advance to keep their jobs theoretically. So I think it makes sense to change, but I get from a fan's perspective, it does kind of stink to have to like, you're like, I know 3 of these guys. I know Benteke, I know Bartlett, and I know Herrera. Who are all these other jokers? Yeah, I enjoy it. I think it's fun to learn that.
We're the sickos, man. We're the sickos.
Yes, sickos only.
Oh, we forgot to. I'll add that a little bit at the end. There is something I do want to discuss related to MLS that I almost completely forgot about. Brandon Zabron. Any guess at what the starting 11 will look like for opening day? No idea.
Give us a couple more weeks.
Yeah, it's really up in the air. This is the most up in the air I think I felt on the roster.
Christian Benteke, I think that's a reasonable guess.
Maybe
potentially.
Maybe. And Herrera probably. I think a right back and Schnag, and that's about all I'm comfortable saying because I think formationally, I have no clue like what this team. I think a lot of it's going to be. I think a lot of it's going to be who shows up, who's ready to rock and roll as far as training goes. I think Brendan Carter asked about Rawls. I think despite the fact of being on the roster, he was an unused sub. Question: what is the biggest need? What would you still be your biggest need to address on this team? 10 or center midfield. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yep.
I think that's where
depending on the formation we play. Peglo being a Swiss Army knife is great because he'll be needed in all those positions. If I were like a Pirani truther, like a huge fan, I'd be like, we're set, great, excellent. But the fact that I still have doubts, that's the only position that really, like I said before, wingback is now manned, it's covered, but it is not. They have yet to spend like substantial money in that depth, and that's maybe they just don't want to, and that's fine. I'm just concerned since Schnag had injuries last year and missed a good chunk of the year with muscle injuries, and Herrera had absences to red cards, has an international situation. So those are and Herrera proved himself to be such a integral, a Nahar like. When his absence is there, it's like really, really notable. So that's the only thing I'm really concerned about is maybe and maybe there's not just a fullback hanging out at MLS quality. And there was at the beginning of free agency. I think we were looking at some of them, but that's so 10 for me. What about you?
Yeah, 10 center midfield. I would like to see another center back just to compete. I'm not sold on Garrison Tubbs. I would like one more kind of in there. Really, I would feel like maybe with the exception of attacker and the right and left wings, because I just feel like, really Teku Pietro and Gabriel Pirani are like Swiss Army knives as far as like where they can sit in that attack. It's like they can fill every role. You've got Hakeem. Let me make sure I get his name right. Whatever the new draft pick that they brought in, Hakeem Karamoko, who can kind of fill that role. I think that is, really any position. I would love maybe one more player, maybe on at least three of those three or four positions that can like actually compete. And I think they have the roster spot to do it as well. So the roster space, they don't have the international space. There's still plenty of free agent. There's still some free agents out there that maybe they could bring in to fill that role. Gabriel Aguero, of course, is the U19 player they are interested in. That also someone pulled up. There was a rumor on that during the summer. So we'll see what happens there. Is it acceptable for you to go in without that fourth U22 slot in, or would you be okay waiting until the summer?
Oh, wait. I think that's fine. I'd rather have them pick the guy they want than rush into it here for the downside of that is a young player needs a lot more time to get integrated and comfortable with the league. So having those extra couple months might be a benefit, but I think they've brought in so many new players that they need to see where they net out with those players and what they still need. So I think it would make it's prudent to wait. I don't think it's a huge deal.
Yeah. And with regards to the number 10, I know this is a number 10 league, but the team really didn't play with a true number 10.
It didn't, but I think that I think us and other fans often talked about sort of the one note attack due to the fact that they never did play through the middle. So having that as an option, as a route would be really, really helpful for this team when when hitting and hoping is not working anymore. You got to have some other options. That's the only reason I fixated on it so much. I think
that's fair. I want to see fewer goals in. And then
for sure.
Our Kavada 2244 says, have expectations changed from last year? I guess like my expectation was always that this team be top 7, and it's still my expectation. It doesn't mean that if they don't meet that expectation that I will be fire Mackay. Maybe I don't know what that means necessarily for Troy Lesesne as head coach. I'd like to still think you give him maybe at least another season. But I think top 7, every MLS team top 7 should be the goal, regardless of where you are in the roster. And maybe that's a bare minimum expectation. 8-9 is like your last chance saloon. Maybe you can, where if once you get to the middle of the season, then you start talking about 8-9 potentially. But right now, beginning of the season, top 7 is where I want this team to be.
Yep.
So it's 7, 6, 5th. I think that's still very much an expectation this year. And we did have a Spirit question. Wanted to talk about, did you see the new trailer for we got MLS preseason, Red Bulls, Charleston Battery, Coffee Pot Cup resumes. Colorado Rapids, Nashville SC, and then, of course, in Florida, the Dynamo to be determined. I have zero expectation we will be able to see any of these games, unfortunately.
We will ask. People will ask in the comments, though. That it will certainly be a question, but no, I think not.
And this leads into this leads into my point. You create. So they did the whole. They had reporters reporting out quotes from these executives, quotes from these things. Like, you have a major sports league on Apple TV. You have the ability to broadcast whatever you want. This is an app purely for those people who are MLS fans, who want to know about their team, who want to watch their team, who want to see their team featured. Broadcast stuff. Doesn't matter what it is. Load that website up with content. So at the very least, people can say, well, it's behind a paywall, but man, you will not find a better sports league that covers that gives fans access to their team.
Home for the sickos.
This is a part of it. The preseason games are a part of that as well. Mandate that every team has to do 3 broadcasted preseason games. It's really not that hard. Mandate that in there. Put it on Apple TV, have it in the stadiums. Like, you can get the cameras in there. Just give the fans some content. They are broadcasting now the Drive to Survive MLS series, Onside, I believe is what it's going to be called. That's great.
Clever.
yeah. The name's terrible. I hate it.
They didn't stretch for that.
Maybe Drive to Survive was viewed just as terribly, but that's good. I love that. Give me some background, give me some content. I just sit around and I've been going to the gym a lot more, and just the amount of stuff they show on NFL Network where they're breaking down plays, they're breaking down options, they're doing all this stuff. And I'm like, man, this is what MLS needs. Give me a weekly show, give me an hour-long show, produce it, where you're showing, previews, you're having interviews, you're having all of this stuff to educate your fans. And there are more than 469,000 people that watch MLS. There are millions of people who watch MLS. The problem, I feel like, isn't that there aren't enough people that care. The problem is that everybody cares about their team. People here care about DC United. They don't care about watching LA versus New York. You can change that by giving them some people to care about. I say this constantly with San Jose. I did not care necessarily about Chris Wondolowski. I found it interesting. He was chasing the Golden Boot record. NBC Sports did a whole profile of him. Suddenly it was I am rooting for this guy. This guy is great. This guy is entertaining. His wife have silly banter. It was pure fluff piece, but it made you root for people. It's base level stuff. Just do more content, educate people about your teams. There are so many teams now. It's sometimes so difficult to keep track. So
there's two ways to do it. There's two ways to make me watch a Red Bull LA Galaxy game in the middle of the year. One is to sign David Beckham and Thierry Henry and have them playing. That's one way to do it. And the other way is to make me care about other players that are not David Beckham and Thierry Henry there are storytellers. There are people that could do this job, and it wouldn't be super expensive.
There was a player for the New York Red Bulls whose wife literally went out on social media and said, "I have not heard from you."
Seriously.
As horrible as that is, as bad as that is at least drama and entertainment. Give me some of that stuff. Give me some of the reaction. Have him show up in the interview room and say, "I'm not answering questions about that." Or have him give his side. Give me some more of that. That would have added some drama, maybe to the scene. The biggest problem too is you want to know what watching F1 content. You know what a lot of it comes from? It comes from memes. It comes from stuff in that show that just gets drawn out. It builds up those personalities. That's what MLS is missing, man. It's missing
it's missing bad guys. It's missing conflict. It's missing a league that is open and interested in allowing that sort of gray area. That's always been the problem with MLS. It's been the fact that the media arm has been central inside of the league because they couldn't get anyone else to cover it in a major way, is being open and willing to air your own dirty laundry for the sake of getting new eyeballs. And they don't want to do that. And they never have.
And hopefully, I'm hopeful this show changes. I'm excited to watch this show. I believe it'll be a day before the season starts. So I'll be interested. I'll pull up some popcorn, watch it. I'm hopeful it'll be enjoyable. But the way I think about it too, remember when I think it was Jonathan, when Geraldes came in to the roster, or to the team, and he I think he was asking about cake or something like that. And that became a meme that the Rose Room Collective used. That's what MLS needs. Give me the memes. I'm not saying it's going to revolutionize TV ratings, but it'll get more people to care. So
also one of the first the first preseason games at IMG, and the IMG has the cameras. I think everyone knows that from over the years. That would certainly not be a problem. So, but I think that also, just to bring it back to the preseason, a lot of the coaches are really precious about not showing their early product too, and particularly as they're bringing in a whole bunch of new young players. I'd love to see it, but to your point before, having it behind the paywall is good. And they have MLS Next Pro there. They could have this. It would be good. I want to make me care about these players, particularly since DC United will have 6 new players in their starting 11 probably in week 1 or 2.
Yeah.
Do we have any more questions, or are we tapped?
I think we're pretty much tapped, or at least the ones we want to tap. Sorry if we had a lot of questions this week, guys. So sorry if we didn't get to your questions. A lot of you guys asked, similar questions too. I think there's a lot of similar stuff on people's minds.
And there's no soccer to actually watch yet. So, and also we did not forget the Spirit existed, but we did just go an hour talking about a team that's not in function yet. So give us till our next show. We'll have a much more balanced show. So get your questions in. The Spirit are filling roster holes, players moving in and out. We've got international games this week, I think, for both the men and the women, perhaps. So some stuff to talk about. I think we've not talked about this yet. If we're back, but we might be back, or at least close to back. Maybe we're every other week back.
Yeah, we might still be. Depends on what the news happens. There's a lot of news, and we skipped.
Yeah, there's a lot when you skip almost a month. That for sure. That is true.
I think the only thing we can say, the Spirit, regards to the Spirit, they got some new rookies in there. This brave new world of signing draft picks. So they were able to sign a couple, Deborah Abadan from Pittsburgh and Emma Gaines Ramos from San Diego State. I have not watched any of them, so I will not comment on any of them. And we did get a question related to the Spirit, and I do want to at least read it out. It says, I believe it comes from Tom Murga. I'm going to say McGraw. Tom King hired Tom Daschle to lobby on behalf of RFK Stadium transfer bill. What are the odds a second arena being built on the site exclusively?
High.
You think so high?
I think high. I think all her cards are in this deck. She's hired many law firms. She's hired the Daschle group. I think she's hired Republicans too. So she's got both ends of the spectrum covered. She wants her own spot. The campus is large enough. If she's willing to put in her own money, her seemingly endless pile of money that she has access to, I think it's possible. I mean, it's not like 100%, but I think it's greater than 15%.
I got to ask though, what's this? I mean, you're able to sell out that 20,000 seat stadium, or get but you're renting it. So if we look at the arenas that have been built, kind of for NWSL sides, Louisville, I'll throw into there. It's owned by the same organization. It was built obviously for Louisville City as their USL Championship side, but also built for their NWSL side. They're sort of the main attraction there. I believe that's like 15,000. The new stadium built for Kansas City, 10,000 seats. That's what you're kind of looking at, I feel like, at that type of site. Is that what you really want to do, or do you want to target the 20,000 seat stand? I think that would potentially be tricky to build. And then the question's going to be, we already have Audi Field. Why would we? That's always going to be the question if you're going that. So I don't know.
It would have to be very highly capitalized to make that happen. Also, the Commanders are going to want all that space. They're going to want so much of that space. And if they're a team now that is going and winning playoff games, I think you're about to see a real resurgence in their ability to throw their weight around in the district. So I think that as much as Kang may want it, and as much as she may try to make it happen, it still feels like the arrangement that they're in is a good one. As far as like having room, and I'm sure she'd like to be able to control a lot more about the stadium, but I think they do a great job. They do actually, in my mind, having been to a lot of both games, they do a better job of the game day experience than DC United do. They do a much better job at their own stadium. So I don't think it's super highly likely, but it's very possible.
Yeah, I'm skeptical that it would be very, very skeptical. Considering how long it took, it would be unbelievable considering how long it took DC to get the same thing done, and not even at the RFK campus. So
she gets what she wants pretty quickly, though. Historically,
yeah, that's
she made this team be sold to her. she just made it. She made it be so. So I don't bet against her.
All right, fair enough. All right, I think that's gonna do it. Hour-long show. We got just into that. So thank you guys so much for listening. TBD on our next show. I think it's going to depend on the news and kind of how we're feeling about everything else. Thank you guys so much for listening. You guys are great. You guys are awesome. We'll continue to pumping out maybe some written content. I'm not going to commit because life gets in the way sometimes. So thank you guys so much for listening. We will catch you guys next week. or maybe sometime down the road. Probably sometime down the road.
We'll catch you.
Which we'll catch you when we catch you. Vamos. Bye.
Do you want to give Brian